Hey guys, I think I may have found the best closed back gaming headphone. Um, I occasionally get asked on the audio website, what is the best gaming headphones? Okay, I get asked that a lot by gamers. So I always tell them the Biodynamic DT990 for a couple of months with worn pads measures better than all these different brands. Um, But I think I actually found a pretty decent gaming headphone that can actually compete somewhat with what I typically recommend. So I typically recommend these two headphones and earbuds, the SimGod EM6Ls and the Biodynamic DT990s with worn ear pads. I typically recommend these two because they follow the target the best. They're amazing. Now, let's clear these and bring in, I just recently added a bunch of Steelseries headphones. And I was really impressed by the Arctic 7P here. They don't make it anymore. They make the 7P Plus apparently now. That's the new one. And we can see the 7P Plus one is possibly a little bit worse. This huge 8K peak here, and it seems, I mean, besides that, they're basically the same. This one peak right here around 6K is kind of bad too. Obviously, this 10K dip is pretty bad, but they don't sell the 7P anymore, so you got to get the 7P plus. Now, if we look at the Biodynamic DT 1990s, we can see they measure extremely similarly. Now, let's switch it to balanced pads instead of analytical pads on the buyers. So we can get that bass boost, if you didn't see that again. Analytical versus bass boosted. Let's change the color. So if we look at this, the Biodynamic DT 1990s are very expensive versus the Steelseries Arctic 7P Plus. We can see the 7P Plus have more deep bass emphasis, more power. They have about the same amount of mid bass bloat, but the Arctic 7P Plus is actually better in this region. It's got more power. Sadly, it doesn't have more sub bass. It's kind of sad. But still, the Arctics are better here. And when we look in the highs, I mean, they're basically the same. So whatever's going on here, it's actually smoother in the upper mids right here on the Steelseries. And the Steelseries is closed back. Do you understand closed back? Closed back headphones usually do not compete with open back headphones very well. Oh, usually, the open back version of a headphone is going to have a smoother, cleaner response overall. But in this case, the Arctic 7P Plus is closed back. So you're getting a closed back headphone that is having the performance of, if not better, than an open back headphone. And Steelseries, I mean, they come out of nowhere. Like, what the hell? Okay. Now let's look at, the Arctic 7P Plus, you guys donate $150, I'll buy them. Okay, so now let's compare it to the DT990s with fresh ear pads. That's what I recommend. So let's change it from worn to fresh ear pads. Okay, so you could argue that the DT990 is fresh out of the box. They have much weaker bass on the DT990s Pro. Fresh ear pads, fresh. So when you first get the DT990s, this is how they sound. Very peaky, sharp. That 6K fatigue is actually pretty bad. And then the snakes in the recording, the shimmery sizzle harshness from these three peaks. So sizzly, harsh. And then this 6K peak fatigue, because your ear is most sensitive in this region. So any peaks in this region is actually really bad. This is bad too. So this peak and this peak on these two headphones are actually really bad. Now, once the pads wear in on the DT990s, the DT990s smooth out in the treble completely. So now it's no contest. The 990s are smoother in this region, and then they got a little bit of bite, a little bit of sparkle, a little bit of shimmer still in the air frequencies, but you get a much tamer sound here. Okay, so maybe we could bring back the Arctic. Let's bring back the Arctic. Let's bring back the Arctic 7Ps real quick and hide the 7P plus. And we can see the original 7Ps, very, very good and comparable to the Biodynamic DT990s in a lot of ways. I kind of also wanted to do this. You know, a lot of people recommend the Tigers by Biodynamic. So that's the Tigers by Biodynamic. And we can see the Tigers have this 6K peak that never goes away right here, the Tigers. So, you know, there's some people that are like, oh, the Tigers are better than the DT990s because they're not as bright and harsh in the highs. But you can see that you might as well get the Steelseries Arctic 7P. Now, again, the 7P are discontinued, so let's stop looking at them. Let's look at the 7P plus. That's kind of sad, to be honest. Poor 7Ps. I know somebody's going to go out there and buy these 7Ps used, or I'm sure you could probably still find them. But they got the 7P plus. Yeah, that's sad. Because that 8K peak went through the roof. That's sad. So again, that's why you got to watch out with audio equipment. You know, they come out with a good one and then they replace it with a crappy one. So this peak right here on the Tigers versus this peak here on the Steelseries Arctics. Okay, and then the better bass on the Steelseries. So I just wanted to bring up the Tigers because some people, you know, used to glamorize that. But let's just look at what, you know. So when you look at the Steelseries Arctic 7P Plus versus the endgame DT990, okay, get the DT990 worn pad 250 ohm. I'm just saying that the Arctis 7P Plus, it doesn't look that bad. Now let's compare it to just other gaming brands. Razer, we can go ahead and just compare, see if anything by Razer is any better. I talked about the Opus X. If it didn't have that 4K peak, you know, it'd be pretty good too. The Kraken, oh god, look at the treble, it's all gone. Look at that thing. Jeez. That's actually very similar. That's actually pretty similar. If you look at the tonalities, obviously they're different in a lot of ways, but like where the peaks and the dips are, and okay, the terrible. See how some of them are getting pretty similar, but you know, in this case, I would say the Arctis is better. So the Arctis is better than what Razer is peddling. You know, we can look at like Plantronics. It's kind of a gaming. You can see Plantronics, you know, pretty close. But I would go with the Steelseries. You know, what other brand is there? HyperX. So HyperX is actually pretty close to the Arctis 7P Plus. At least that the HyperX Cloud Alpha doesn't have the huge you know, a 9K peak. But it looks like you get an overall, like if we smooth out this, I would say the Arctis is, you know, it's got less peaks and dips, you know. So I would still get the Arctis 7P Plus. So what other brands is there? That's like a gaming brand that I looked at. Steelseries, HyperX, Razer. You know, main point of this video is I would highly consider getting the Arctis 7P Plus. And if you can, you know, get the old one if the old one's not like screwed up in some way. That, yeah, the 7P original looks like it could be slightly better in the highs. But they don't make it anymore. Besides that huge 8K peak, and let's just look at some stuff that a lot of people glamorize, like the HD 800 by Sennheiser. So you could argue that the HD 800 by Sennheiser is worse in a lot of ways. What about the HD 800S? Yeah, you either want like, so the HD 800S is like $1,500. It has crappy analytical bass, so the bass is better on the Steelseries. This huge peak and cut on the HD 800S. I would argue I would rather have a huge peak. I'd rather have this than this. So this is just a huge black void on the huge peak. On the HD 800S, that's bad. I would rather just have this one huge 8K peak, to be honest. It's still pretty bad, though. What about, like, other closebacks, like DT770s? You could argue the Steelseries is better in a lot of ways. So if you wanted the closed-back version of the DT990s, you would have to deal with these, lumpy mid-bass and bass, terrible. On the DT770s, this huge 4K cut, terrible. This shouty presence region, terrible. Holes in the treble and air. I would say, clear as day, the Arctic 7P Plus is better than DT770s. So it's really, honestly, something special. You can see the Arctis 7P Plus is quite possibly the best gaming headphone you can get. Now again, you can get the DT990s with worn ear pads, and you're going to get a flatter, smoother sound, more transparent sound with the biodynamic DT990s with worn ear pads. You can see in this region the 990s with worn ear pads are in the game. Okay, they don't have this huge cut and peak deviation. They're not as bloated in the bass. Okay, so the deep bars are better headphones, but they're open back, they're not closed back. But I wouldn't get the Arctis because I've got better things like the Simgadi M6Ls, the DT990s. I think the Simgadi M6L, the biodynamic DT990s with worn ear pads, even the Hype 2. So we see the Simgadi M6Ls are smoother, better across the board. Even the Hype I see. The audio Hype 2s. Even the Hype 2s, I would get the Hype 2s over the Arctis, just because of that 8K peak problem. But if that 8K peak problem wasn't there, it'd be pretty damn good. So I think the Arctis is one of the best closed back gaming headphones you can possibly get. Is it the best option? No, you could get the Hype 2, you could get the DT990s, you could get the EM6Ls. There's a lot of options that you could get that are better. So I would say these three options, the audio Hype 2 is better. Beyerdynamic DT990s with one-ear pads to dampen treble peaks is better. SimGuide EM6L is better. But in fourth place, Steelseries Arctis 7P Plus, I guess. I'll see you guys later. It's a gaming headphone.